Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It is now time for the Pony Cake Sports Podcast with your host, Josh Stevens and Tom Schultz. Woo!
Hey there, everybody. We are back with another episode, and this episode is going to be the Week 14 quarterback forecast, and it's kind of a comical forecast in my opinion, because just looking at these rankings, again, we're on fantasyomatic.com. One more time, fantasyomatic.com. Please, guys, follow along with us if you can. Basically, they do an algorithm. We kind of break it down. They give us the number one ranking, and they kind of go down from there. And I really just looked at the list, and I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. Normally we start at the top, but I think this is a little hilarious.
It's kind of a comedy list, in my opinion. There's a lot of questionable rankings that were just making me laugh out loud a couple seconds ago.
On this ranking, they have Dak Prescott at number 31, which is fine. If you want to rank him at 31, whatever. If you do that, and that's what your algorithm spits out, whatever. I'll deal with it, because he basically has, last couple games, not struggled passing the ball, but they've ran the ball very well. And they've kind of coasted from there on out. But if you're telling me you're going to put Dak Prescott at 31 and put Bryce Petty at 27, get out of here.
It's a joke.
There is no way. And then I go even a little bit higher on this list, and I look at number 20. And that is none other than the great Jared Goff at number 20.
I don't get it.
You're telling me you're going to put Jared Goff at 20, Robert Griffin III, who hasn't played since, week 2?
Yep.
At number 21, and then you're going to put Dak Prescott, of all people, at number 31.
It's disrespect.
I am almost speechless.
Let's just start at the top.
I'm sorry, I had a rant. I'm sorry. Number 1 for this week is Drew Brees. He is, of course, facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 2 is going to be Ben Roethlisberger. I'm just going to round out the top 5. Number 3 is going to be Kirk Cousins. Number 4 is Alex Smith. And number 5 is Cam Newton. Tom, out of those top 5, would you take anybody out? Would you plug anybody in?
I really don't like Alex Smith at 4. Not a big fan of Cam at 5 either. San Diego's defense has been playing pretty well. Been keeping a lot of offenses in check. And I really don't like any of these guys this week, in all honesty. There's quite a few guys I'd put in their place.
Yeah, honestly, Russell Wilson is at number 10 on this list. I'd rather have him higher. I'd rather have him in my top 5. Kirk Cousins at 3 is a little rough, just for the fact that they're playing at Philly. And when you play at Philly, their defense, again, they've played pretty decent. So
besides 1 week, they've been lights out and have held every quarterback under 14 points in standard scoring.
Ben Roethlisberger, you look at him. They're at Buffalo. It could be snowing in Buffalo.
And it's on the road. His home and away splits are huge. He averages like 24 points at home and under 16 on the road. So
if you had to create your top 5 for this week instead of their top 5, of course, again, like I said, it's Brees, Roethlisberger, Cousins, Smith, and Newton. Who would be your top 5?
Brees always deserves to be up there.
Okay.
I really like Carr this week, KC. KC's defense is good, but they've been giving up a lot of yards to quarterbacks. I really like Matt Ryan against the Rams. I think they have all possibilities to blow them out this week. I like Jameis Winston this week, even though he's super low. How many is that, 4?
Yep.
And my number 5 would be... Give me some Colin Kaepernick. He's going to start this week.
Colin Kaepernick.
Big bounce back week for Colin.
If I had to pick my top 5, I am not going Drew Brees, because Tampa Bay is going to end up intercepting him like 3 or 4 times.
Ooh.
Give me Russell Wilson at Green Bay. Give me Phillip Rivers.
You nervous about snow in Green Bay?
A little bit, but not much. Give me Phillip Rivers at Carolina. Give me Matt Ryan at L.A. Give me Jameis Winston at New Orleans, or at home, and then give me Matthew Stafford at home. He's playing in a dome.
I don't think there's that many great matchups this week. It's going to be hard for people in the playoffs. A lot of the good quarterbacks are facing tough people. Look, Tom Brady against the Ravens. I'm not too hot on that. Normally Brady's always in my top 5, but the Ravens always keep him in check. Like you said, Drew Brees, that's not really a good matchup against Tampa, how they've been playing. They held Phillip Rivers in check last week. He had a couple costly turnovers to end the game pretty much. And it's tough pickings this week at the quarterback position.
There are a couple of people that do have tough matchups, like we said. I think even Kirk Cousins, as well as he's playing Philly, like we mentioned earlier. Would you end up sitting Kirk Cousins for, let's say, Carson Wentz maybe?
No.
What about a Eli Manning?
No.
What about who else would be out there? Ryan Tannehill against Arizona?
No.
Obviously not.
I'd start Jameis over him. I'm super high on Jameis this week.
Yeah, same here. Matthew Stafford, are you starting him hands down? No thoughts about it?
Yeah, you kind of have to. I haven't been super high on him. You've been a lot higher on him. You own him in quite a few leagues. But I'm starting to believe, man. I know it's late in the year, but he's great for that offense. Great fit. Jim Bob Cooter is making him produce in real football and in fantasy football. And that's what you want. That's what you want.
And I agree, because Jim Bob Cooter and Matt Stafford are a perfect combo.
Yep.
And I'm a little afraid to see what happens if Jim Bob Cooter does get any consideration for head coaching jobs at the end of the year. Because if he does get consideration, then what happens to Matthew Stafford? Does that bring him back to where he was 2 years ago, or before the middle point of last year, or week 8 of last year? Because that Matthew Stafford was not playing good football at all. Now he's being talked about for the MVP this year, and rightfully so. But yeah, out of all those, who's your highest quarterback this week scoring points wise, and who do you think is going to score the lowest? If you had to look at it like fantasy perspective, obviously.
Put me on the spot.
Yep.
I'm all in on Jameis, man. I think he has a chance to put up huge numbers this week. I could see him 275, 290 with 4 touchdowns, a similar game that Luck had this week. I think it has potential to be a shootout. That Tampa Bay defense is playing good, but you know what happens when the NFC South plays each other. A lot of times they score a bunch of points. For worst quarterback of the week, it might be Jared Goff. He's been terrible, him or Bryce Petty. I wouldn't think about starting either of them. If I had an algorithm, they'd be ranked 60th and 61st.
Playing backups before them.
Yes.
Wow. I'm kind of in the same boat. I really like Stafford. I like Winston, like you said. So, I think I'm going to go towards Stafford scoring the most points this week. I know I'm super high on him this week, and I think it's rightfully so. But I think number 2, who's going to score the most points after Stafford, I'm going to go with Phillip Rivers. And he's playing Carolina. I understand it's at Carolina, but I just think Phillip Rivers, this is going to be one of those games where he just does his thing. And I'm hoping Tyrell Williams is 100% healthy. And I think Inman is still his new safety valve, I guess you could say. They had a great showing at the beginning of last week. Had a 35-yard touchdown right at the beginning of the game. And relied on him down the stretch. But also, Melvin Gordon is going to get a lot of carries and take a lot of the burden off of Phillip Rivers' shoulders. So,
can you imagine Phillip Rivers with Danny Woodhead and Keenan Allen in that offense right now?
I say it every week because I love Keenan Allen. But
losing Keenan Allen, it might have been one of the best things that could happen to that team. Look, Tyrell Williams and Inman both stepped up and are showing they're capable starting NFL wide receivers. That's good for them.
That's true. And then when Keenan Allen does come back, because I have actually saw a tweet and a report saying that Keenan Allen will be 100% healthy by the time spring training rolls around. And that is going to be huge for him and huge for the team in general. Because when you have Tyrell Williams, that is looking very talented as he is, and then you're going to have Inman, who's doing what he's doing, Travis Benjamin doing what he's doing. You're going to have Hunter Henry. And then a fully healthy Keenan Allen on top of Melvin Gordon. I think that offense is going to be, I don't want to say unstoppable next year, but it's going to be very, very, very good and very hard to stop. And I think Phillip Rivers is going to be a big, big part of that. So, I know Wilson and Rodgers are playing each other. Out of those two guys, who would you be more comfortable starting? And I know they're playing in Green Bay, even with the snow. Who out of those two guys, if you had to rely on, who are you starting?
Seattle's real tough, but Rodgers has done a decent job against them. They beat Seattle last year, and Rodgers put up decent numbers. I'm expecting Jordy's numbers to be down, but they've been having a couple other guys step up. Jared Cook, Devontae Adams, even we had a Randall Cobb sighting last week. But I think I'm still going to go Wilson. I like what their weapons are doing. Lockett came alive last week. You got Jimmy Graham's playing good, and I think this could be one of those Doug Baldwin games, but I'm going Wilson in that.
Yeah, I agree. I like Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers. Even though they're on the road, I still like them. Number 12 and 13, we have Andy Dalton and Carson Palmer. Andy Dalton's he's playing Cleveland, the Browns, and Carson Palmer is playing the Dolphins in Miami. Out of those two guys, if you had to rely on one, and again, you are now in the playoffs because it is fantasy season, who are you relying on and why?
That's tough. Both those guys had good weeks last week. Palmer, it was probably his best overall game of the season. Didn't have any turnovers, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. And Dalton, he had over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm going to pick Dalton in this game. I think Cleveland's an easier matchup. They're familiar with them, and I think his weapons are good enough to beat that offense, or that defense.
I think I'd be a little bit worrisome if I had Carson Palmer this week, just for the fact that Miami is coming off of a blowout loss, and I'd be a little worried that they're going to have a bounce-back game this week. So I would tend to go with Andy Dalton just a little bit over Carson Palmer, but just a tad. Next two I wanted to talk about were number 14 and 15, and that is Phillip Rivers and Derek Carr. I know we just talked about Phillip Rivers a minute ago, but it is Phillip Rivers. He's at Carolina, and Derek Carr at Kansas City. I know you've mentioned Carr. I mentioned Rivers. What about you?
I like both matchups.
Yeah?
Kansas City, you're able to pass on them, and Carr has tons of weapons in Oakland, but the case you made for Phillip Rivers, you convinced me, man. I like him this week. He deserves to be higher. I think they both deserve to be higher. But I think Rivers is going to be able to torch that Carolina pass defense. They've been god-awful all year. The Seattle Seahawks wide receivers and Russell Wilson made them look like hot garbage last week. And we still don't know if Kuechly's playing. When he's out, that defense is completely different. And it's like them missing their point guard or their quarterback on defense. It's not looking good for them. So go Phillip Rivers in that one.
There are 4 more guys I want to talk about, and the first 2 is going to be Matt Ryan and Tom Brady. Ryan is going to be facing LA, and Tom Brady is going to be one of the guys that we haven't really talked about, but he's facing Baltimore Ravens.
I really don't want anything to do with Tom Brady when he's facing the Ravens. They seem to have his number.
They are at home, though.
They are at home. They were at home last week as well, and they didn't really struggle, but they didn't look like that normal Patriots high explosive offense. So give me Matt Ryan in this.
Last one, just because I have to. Carson Wentz or Blake Bortles. They're at number 18 and number 19. If you are hoping and praying on your fantasy lives, I hope you're not, but if you had to rely on it, which one and why?
I just threw up a little in my mouth,
I
John.
know. It's not good. I'm sorry.
I want nothing to do with Bortles against the Vikings. Their defense isn't the same week 1 through week 5 Vikings, but they're still good enough. They held Dallas in check last week. I wouldn't want to start Wentz either. He's been pretty bad after his first 5 or 6 games of the year. He had 3 turnovers last week, but he's at least getting a ton of yards. He had over 300 last week, so I got to go Wentz with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way in God's green earth am I ever going to go with Blake Bortles against that Minnesota defense.
I'd probably start Osweiler over both of those.
And that's ugly.
And I hate Osweiler.
Yeah. Again, guys, that is going to be our Week 14 quarterback forecast. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, please reach out to us on Twitter at PonyCakeSports or email us ponycakesports@gmail.com or follow us on SleeperBot, like our episodes, tweet them out, do all that good stuff. For Tom and myself, thank you very much and good luck this week.